with you. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, 20 million people are at risk of starvation within the next 6 months in Nigeria, Somalia, South Sudan, and Yemen. Some 22 million children have been left hungry, sick, displaced, and out of school in those 4 countries. Nearly 1.4 million are at imminent risk of death this year from severe malnutrition. The United Nations is appealing for $5.6 billion in 2017 to address famines in these 4 countries. They and other stakeholders, NGOs and others around the world, indicate what is really needed, not just resources, although I'd love it if you would speak to what measures the EU member countries intend to take in this effort, but they're asking for a diplomatic surge. Your member countries have significant leverage, as does the United States, to help in this area. What are you doing?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question. We are actually, the European Union and its member states combined, we are the largest provider of development assistance in the world. Some 58% of global development assistance goes to the world, and the same is true for humanitarian. So I think we are already extremely active. We are very sensitive to emerging new crises, and that is why we have additional funds available for emergency humanitarian aid. So, I mean, this we take very seriously. We know that the crisis in Syria mainly turned into a refugee crisis because there was not sufficient funds for the UNHCR.
So learning from those lessons in Syria, Yemen, South Sudan, Nigeria, Somalia, what is the European Union doing?
Well, the first instance is, of course, to try to, if there's an immediate humanitarian problem, people starving, is to move food and to work with the humanitarian agencies, which is who we work with, to deliver the necessary food and resources. Of course.
How much are you delivering?
Sir, I cannot give you a precise number this morning. I'm happy to give it to you
I think it's later. In the millions. With respect to a diplomatic surge, what is being done by the EU member countries on that front?
Well, you know, as always in these situations, as you rightly point out, behind the immediate crisis of humanitarian, there's frequently a problem of governance, management of the economy, and so forth. We work very closely with all the countries that you've mentioned to try to help them address those issues and get to the root cause, which then provokes a famine or an immediate crisis. So we operate on both levels, trying to deal with the immediate crisis, the humanitarian relief, and at the same time trying to see if we can help these countries through technical assistance, but also through more structured investment.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We were told roughly, I think a week and a half ago, that within the next 2 weeks, we would start to see the leading edge of these 20 million people dying. That's 3 times the population of my home state of Indiana. So I would certainly welcome the opportunity for the United States, which I believe needs to act far more boldly on this front, to work with our partners at the European Union to also act far more boldly on this front and try and provide some measure of relief to these individuals who will suffer. If I could turn to the importance of our trading relationship. I am a firm believer in the need to open up our respective markets to one another. We certainly mutually benefit from it. 80% of U.S. foreign direct investment comes from Europe. Our economic relationship supports 15 million jobs on both sides of the Atlantic. Hoosiers, almost 26% of our exports go to Europe, so thank you very much. And Germany is the 3rd largest export destination after Canada and Mexico for our exports. In your original prepared testimony, you indicated that our economic and trade relationship is very balanced. We could talk about the trade deficit. I'm not as concerned as some are about that, although there are things we need to do domestically working with the EU to address that. But I see great imbalance with respect to a particular sector, and that is medical. Pharmaceuticals, you've got a ceiling on price in so many of your member countries, diagnostics, other medical services. What can the EU do to help address the subsidy that the American people pay to the wealthy countries of the European Union for pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, and others in terms of research and development?
Well, Senator, I mean, at the end of the day, these are commercial transactions where products are manufactured, where they're sold. It is true that within Europe, most of our member states in the healthcare systems do try to limit the excessive cost of pharmaceuticals and to manage that in the best ways possible, but it's always done in discussion with the companies. So I'm not sure there's anything that in terms of how the trade flows, this is ultimately down to the commercial decisions of companies and of the healthcare systems.
The private companies working with your member governments on agreements, and then and at the consumer level, it is American consumers that are bearing a disproportionate burden of the costs of these things that your member countries benefit from. And so I see a disparity there, and it's of concern to many Americans. And I just wanted to very directly communicate that to you, and perhaps we could work constructively on this matter moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator Menendez.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, for being with us today.